The summit hall on Virex Prime was a place designed for peace, which meant it had the calming ambiance of a medical waiting room and roughly the same amount of genuine enthusiasm. The walls shimmered in soft gradients of mauve and green, intended to appeal universally to all known sentient species. Instead, it made most delegates feel vaguely nauseous and weirdly thirsty. Rows of elevated seating wrapped around a polished obsidian floor where two species at a time were invited to hash out their issues under the watchful gaze of 12 security drones, 4 ethics officers, and a small, twitchy cleaning robot named Fizz, who seemed perpetually behind on its job. Jackson Hale stood perfectly still near the third eastern pillar, gripping his pulse rifle not because he expected trouble, but because that was the only part of this situation he understood. His job was simple: look intimidating, don't fall asleep, and above all else, don't speak. He was a soldier, not a diplomat. Someone else handled the talking, the bowing, the fake laughing. He provided background menace and, if needed, a well-timed taser jolt. He'd been assigned to Virex because he had an excellent record, and according to Lieutenant Commander Voss, a face no one would feel threatened by unless they looked too closely. He chose to take that as a compliment. Everything was going normally until the Lasari delegation arrived. First came the ceremonial guards, tall, silver-skinned warriors in sun-patterned armor who looked like they'd stepped out of a myth and accidentally wandered into a political brunch. Then came the advisors, the ministers, the 3 weirdly enthusiastic interpreters, and finally, her. Princess Varela of the Lasari Empire, heir to the second most powerful throne in the spiral arm, strode into the summit with a presence that shattered the usual hush like a grenade in a glass museum. Her skin was pale as polished moonstone, her hair a cascade of luminous yellow curls that glinted like solar flares, and her ears, long, elegant, and twitching slightly, announced her as unmistakably Lasari. She was wearing ceremonial armor that was more sculpted art than protection, and a sash of rank that shimmered with active nanofibers, spelling out her title in 3 languages, 2 of which were only used by birds. Jackson did not notice any of that at first. What he noticed was that she was looking directly at him. He blinked, shifted slightly, looked behind him. No one there. Looked to his side. The other soldier had fallen asleep with his visor down. Jackson swallowed and looked back at her. Still looking. Still walking straight toward him. The hall went quiet. Not respectful, diplomatic silence. Shocked, confused, air sucked out of the room's silence. The human delegates tensed. The Lasari ministers murmured in tones that sounded like musical insults. And Princess Virella stopped in front of Jackson Hale, tilted her head with mild curiosity, then said in flawless Terran, "I want the human soldier. He will be my mate." Somewhere in the back, someone dropped a tray. Fizz the cleaning robot gave a shriek of distress and fled. Jackson blinked again. What?" The room exploded. "Princess, that is unprecedented," gasped Minister Thalen, his neck frills quivering like an upset fern. "The princess is clearly joking," said the Earth Coalition's senior diplomat, who looked more like he wished a black hole would swallow him. "I'm not joking," Varela said, turning slightly to address the gathered crowd. "This human's energy is potent. I feel it in his stance, in the way he grips his weapon. He will bear strong offspring. Also, he is pleasing to look at, in a scruffy and underfed sort of way." Jackson coughed. I'm honored, I think." The emissary of Naltrex 9 fainted. The cleaning robot came back, screamed again, and left. Diplomats scrambled, some shouting about treaties, others about biological compatibility, and a few just screaming the word protocol like it was a magical ward against madness. Jackson stood there, unsure whether to salute, run, or find someone with a legal background. Varela, unfazed, turned to him again. "What is your designation?" "Private First Class Jackson Hale, ma'am." "I will call you Jax," she declared. "It is easier to say during battle cries." We're going to be doing battle cries?" she smiled. "Mating is a type of battle, is it not?" Jackson opened his mouth, closed it, nodded very slowly. By now, emergency diplomatic security teams had arrived. not to restrain Varela, but to figure out if this counted as a kidnapping, a cultural exchange, or a hostile engagement. Earth's ambassador Vickers looked like he was about to retire early, or possibly fake his own death. The Lasari dignitaries huddled and hissed at one another in their native tongue, while Varela leaned comfortably on Jackson's shoulder, admiring the safety clip on his rifle. "I like this design," she mused. "It shows restraint." "I use it mostly to keep from blowing my foot off," Jackson said. She looked up at him with a grin. "Ah, humor. Good. You will need that." Eventually, after much shouting, flailing, and several pages of temporary diplomatic arrangements signed under extreme protest, a consensus was reached. Jackson would remain under protective custody within the Lasari consulate for the duration of the summit. This decision was accompanied by 10 pages of waivers, 6 death threats, and one anonymous fruit basket with a note reading, "Good luck, bro." That evening, Jackson found himself sitting in a palatial suite with more silk than a Terran opera house, a ceiling that displayed constellations he didn't recognize, and a table set for two with dishes that pulsed occasionally. Varela sat across from him, nibbling delicately at something that looked like it might still be alive. "I've never courted a human before," she said thoughtfully, "but I believe this is how it begins." Jackson poked at his food. It oozed. "Are you sure this isn't an elaborate prank by your people to destabilize human morale?" "I don't play games," she said, "unless they involve fire and screaming." He looked at her. She looked back. And then, impossibly, he laughed. "Well," he said, "if this is courtship, I think I might survive." "Maybe." Virella tilted her head. "I like the maybe. It leaves room for adventure." Jackson Hale had never been imprisoned in a 5-star alien consulate before, but he figured if this was captivity, the food could be worse, and the walls could be less sentient. The suite they'd given him was approximately the size of a mid-sized shuttle hangar, and furnished in what he guessed was royal minimalist decadence, complete with chairs that adjusted their density based on mood, and a bed that sighed softly whenever he sat on it. The lights dimmed when he blinked too slowly, which was charming at first and then vaguely condescending. Still, it was better than a holding cell. Probably. Varela had declared the suite their temporary courtship chamber, and by that she meant she would spend every waking moment nearby, sometimes training in the adjacent chamber with plasma swords, sometimes meditating with her ears floating upward in a tank of blue mist, and sometimes asking Jackson questions so strange they felt like part of an alien psychological exam. "Do all humans eat things that grow underground?" she asked one morning over breakfast. "I mean, potatoes are pretty popular," Jackson replied, poking at what appeared to be a bowl of translucent cubes that squeaked when touched. "Interesting. That would explain the density of your lower limbs." "Are you saying I have fat legs?" "I am saying you are well-rooted," she said. "It is a compliment where I'm from." Jackson took a sip of something that tasted like spicy fog and sighed. "This is so much weirder than I imagined military service would be." "Have you mated before?" she asked casually. He choked. "You can't just ask someone that while they're drinking." "But that is when humans are most vulnerable," she said seriously. "I read it in your social data archives. Remind me to delete those files later." The truth was, Jackson was beginning to enjoy himself in an uncomfortably surreal way. Varela, despite her tendency to misunderstand metaphor and treat every emotion as a tactical maneuver, was oddly easy to talk to, or maybe not talk, more like get talked at by, but still there was a rhythm forming, like a weird dance in zero gravity with knives strapped to their backs. Outside their chamber, things were less amusing. The media storm had gone from planetary to galactic within hours. News cycles now ran with headlines like "Alien Royalty in Love with Human Guard," "Interstellar Diplomacy or Galactic Soap Opera," and "Jackson Hale, the soldier who seduced a star," which, for the record, he absolutely had not done. A popular Earth talk show dedicated an entire segment to reading aloud Varela's declaration of mating interest, while interspersing it with romantic saxophone music and audience swoons. One meme simply showed Jackson's stunned face and the caption, "When you were just trying to do your job." His commander sent him a message that said simply, "Don't die." Also, maybe don't get married yet. Worse still, Virella's mother, Empress Cyrelia, sent a private communique to the Earth Council that could be generously summarized as, "Get your species under control before I do it for you." The political temperature was rising faster than the heat vent on a malfunctioning cruiser. Meanwhile, Virella remained blissfully unbothered. "This scandal will pass," she said while sharpening a spear the length of Jackson's entire body. "We Lissari do not fear disapproval. We honor boldness. And if the council tries to remove me from succession, I will challenge them to a trial by stars." Trial by stars? An ancient rite. Involves zero-gravity combat and a meteor. That sounds illegal in at least 12 systems. It is, which is why it is only done on weekends. Jackson leaned against the wall watching her. "So you're really not backing down from this whole human mate thing?" She glanced at him. "Should I?" He scratched the back of his neck. "I mean, I'm flattered, but don't you have, like, a line of royal suitors? People with fancy genetics and planetary fleets?" "Yes, and they are all extremely dull. One of them collects meteor dust. Another writes poetry about dust. One tried to impress me by describing his third heart's rhythm in verse. That sounds romantic?" It sounded like a medical emergency. Jackson couldn't help but laugh. But even humor couldn't distract from the real shift happening around them. Security around the consulate had doubled. Surveillance drones began hovering uncomfortably close. A Lysri priestess named Vakala arrived to assess the purity of intention, which sounded ominous, but mostly involved asking Jackson awkward questions and then humming while she poked at his aura with a glowing stick. "You have many fractures in your energy field," she told him, "but some of them are charming." "Great, I'm emotionally cracked like a vintage teacup." "You are a mystery wrapped in meat," she said solemnly. "Okay, we're done here." As the days passed, Jackson started noticing the small things. The way Virella's ears twitched slightly when she was amused. The way she watched people like she was calculating whether they were threats or future dinner companions. The way she seemed to genuinely listen, even if she didn't always understand. Late one evening, after an exhausting round of interspecies courtship etiquette training, led by a painfully enthusiastic Lissari historian, Jackson collapsed onto the sighing bed and stared up at the shifting starscape on the ceiling. Virella sat beside him, uncharacteristically quiet. "You look tired," she said. "I am. You carry too many expectations. That is the way of your kind, isn't it? We're good at overthinking. Perhaps it is why I like you. You think like a tactician, but act like a poet. That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me while I'm wearing standard issue socks." She smiled, the kind of smile that didn't carry any royal weight or strategic calculation, just quiet curiosity. "Tomorrow," she said, "we are to perform a mutual survival exercise." "Survival as in?" "We are released into a simulated wild zone and expected to return alive. It is considered a bonding ritual. Your people have the weirdest dating traditions. And yet, you haven't run away." Jackson sighed, stared at the ceiling and muttered, "Guess I'm just rooting for the under-eared team?" "Perhaps," she said, "or perhaps you are becoming Lissari in your heart." He glanced over. "That a good thing?" She tilted her head. "Ask me again after the survival exercise. If you still have both feet, I'll tell you." The survival dome was exactly what Jackson feared it would be. A giant alien wilderness simulator with too many things that clicked, glowed, and probably bit. The moment they were dropped into it, the sky overhead dimmed to a twilight purple. The temperature dropped, and something very large howled in the distance, like it had just stubbed its toe on a planet. "So, this is your people's idea of a date," Jackson muttered, stepping around a vine that looked like it might slap him. Virella, who had immediately crouched to sniff the soil like a seasoned tracker, glanced back with a pleased expression. "We bond best under duress. Shared peril reveals the truth of a soul. Back on Earth, we do dinner and a movie." "Sounds primitive. Are there teeth involved?" "Hopefully not." They trudged into the wild zone, which appeared to be a biome mashup of jungle, tundra, and mild psychological trauma. The air shimmered faintly with spores that glowed when exhaled. which Jackson tried not to inhale too deeply. After learning the hard way, they made your skin temporarily smell like cinnamon and betrayal. Their first challenge arrived in the form of a herd of six-legged creatures with translucent fur and eyes that blinked in Morse code. One of them tried to eat Jackson's shoe. "Do they bite?" he asked, hopping on one leg. "They probe," Virella said, "usually the tender parts." Fantastic. Nothing says romance like foot-based interrogation. As they made their way toward the highlands, where a signal beacon supposedly waited, Jackson began to notice that Virella wasn't just a skilled fighter. She was absurdly overqualified for surviving anything short of the heat death of the universe. She moved like the forest belonged to her, ears twitching toward every sound, eyes scanning with surgical precision. Jackson, on the other hand, had gotten a branch stuck in his sleeve 5 times and nearly mistook a sleeping nest of jelly mice for a rock. "I'm contributing moral support," he offered as she silently dispatched a swarm of needleflies with a blade shaped like a crescent moon. "You are very uplifting," she said, "especially when you scream at inanimate objects." "I only screamed once," he protested. "The moss startled you." "It pulsed. It was yawning." Later they made camp by a mineral pool that burbled with faintly violet steam. Virella dug a shallow ring around their resting spot, muttering words in Lasari that Jackson assumed were either protective chants or complex cooking instructions. She handed him a ration bar that resembled a compressed galaxy and told him to chew it with reverence. He tried, failed, and spit half of it out into his sleeve. "This tastes like burned plasma and sadness." "Then it is authentic." They sat beside each other, backs against a large root that occasionally shifted like it was dreaming. Silence stretched between them, the not uncomfortable kind that filled space when neither person needed to speak just to break it. Somewhere in the distance, an avian beast crooned a mating call that sounded suspiciously like an off-key harmonica. Jackson turned to her. "So? Real question. Why me?" Virella didn't answer immediately. She plucked a leaf from a nearby bush and rolled it between her fingers. "When I saw you standing by the summit entrance, still, watchful, silent, I felt something shift in my ears. Not a metaphor. My equilibrium adjusted. A rare phenomenon." "You felt me in your ears? It is not romantic in your language, is it?" "Number. But it's very you." She looked at him then, seriously. "The council expects me to mate for strategy, for power, for stability. But I want something that disorients me, something unpredictable. Well, I'm definitely not stable." "Exactly." He laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was absurdly comforting that someone somewhere thought unpredictability was a feature, not a flaw. And maybe, just maybe, he needed to believe in that too. They slept beneath a twisted sky, not touching, but closer than they had been before. Morning came with a surprise. The beacon was missing. Where it should have stood, on a rise overlooking a field of reflective crystal grass, there was only a circle of melted earth and a small stone with a single word etched in Lasari script. Virella scowled. "Sabotage." "Sabotage by who?" Jackson asked. "You guys control the simulation, right?" She looked grim. "Not entirely. The simulation is monitored, yes, but it is used for trials of many kinds. Not all who enter are honest. Some train assassins here." Jackson rubbed his temples. "And no one thought to tell us we were potentially sharing space with a galactic murder intern?" A loud crash echoed from the tree line. "Too late," Virella muttered, and she was up, spear in hand, before Jackson even finished pulling on his boot. From the shadows emerged a figure draped in shifting cloth, armor that rippled like liquid metal, and a face masked by something that looked like obsidian and screamed evil drama enthusiast. They moved with preposterous grace, flipping effortlessly onto a nearby rock and posing like a villain auditioning for an opera. "I am Zarl of the Silent Oath," the figure said. "You have trespassed into sacred ground. Prepare for combat." "I vote no," Jackson said. Zarl pointed dramatically. "The male speaks. He shall be first." Jackson turned to Virella. "Does this happen a lot with your people?" "Yes, but usually during holidays." The duel that followed was less a fight and more a kinetic art performance involving lasers, parkour, and a lot of high-pitched swearing, most of it from Jackson. Varela moved like lightning, countering Zarel's strikes with a combination of martial precision and dry commentary. "You twirl too much," she said as she deflected a blow. "This is not ballet." "It is elegant technique," Zarel shouted, sweeping his cloak unnecessarily. Jackson threw a rock. It bounced off Zarel's shoulder with a thud. "Uncalled for," the assassin protested. The end came swiftly. Varela ducked low, swept the legs, and jabbed her spear between the plates of the masked figure's armor. Zarel let out a sound that might have been a resigned sigh and collapsed. "Is he dead?" Jackson asked. "No," Varela said. "Just embarrassed." They located a secondary beacon hidden beneath a camouflaged ridge and activated the extraction code. As the simulation began to fade, Jackson exhaled slowly. "Well," he said, "that was definitely more intense than dinner and a movie." Varela looked at him, smiling slightly. "We are well matched, I think." "Yeah," he said, glancing down at the bruise forming on his shin. "If we survive your courtship rituals, we might even survive marriage." The transport chamber hummed softly as it deposited them into the crystalline halls of the Lisseri capital. Jackson stumbled out first, blinking against the flickering lavender light that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere. He was still rubbing his temple from the beacon jump when a fanfare erupted overhead. Literally from overhead, where trumpet-shaped drones zipped around like caffeinated bugs. "Is this normal?" Jackson asked, ducking one. "No," Varela replied, squinting at the far end of the hall. "That's the Royal Orchestra Swarm. They only play when a noble has been victorious, or when someone dies dramatically. I'm guessing we're the victory soundtrack? For now." They barely had time to breathe before an honor guard appeared, each member clad in armor that looked decorative until one tried to scratch his nose and accidentally shot a beam of light into the floor. A path of shimmering tiles unfolded ahead of them, lighting up like a game Jackson once lost in a bar on Mars. "We walk," Varela said, adjusting her stance. "Right. Regal, composed. Totally not freaking out that everyone here looks like they've read a 1,000-year-old prophecy about me." She smiled faintly. "They probably have." As they entered the central chamber, something between a palace, a spaceship hangar, and a place you go to be politely judged by glowing eyes, Jackson felt a familiar itch at the base of his neck. 1,000 gazes pressed down on them from balconies, ledges, and floating discs. Every Lissari present wore some variation of ceremonial finery, including headdresses that made them look like celestial birds or angry chandeliers. A booming voice filled the air. "Princess Varela of House Teledron, you return." The speaker floated down from above, a regal being with antlers made of crystal and a beard braided with star metal. His expression was carved from the same stone as ancient disapproval. Beside him stood 3 advisors and a hologram of what Jackson assumed was a stern legal document with too many footnotes. "Father," Varela said with a respectful nod, "I return with my chosen mate." There was a pause long enough to raise crops in. "You return with this?" The High Sovereign gestured toward Jackson like he was pointing at an unusual side dish. "I have chosen," she said evenly. "It is within my right." "Your right," the Sovereign echoed. "Your right was to begin the trial, not to emerge with a soldier who barely passed his atmospheric acclimatization exam." Jackson raised a finger. "In my defense, your planet's oxygen tastes like chewing peppermint and regret." One of the advisors snorted. The Sovereign glared. "Silence, Arquel." Varela stepped forward. "He survived the trial of synthesis. He defeated Zarel of the Silent Oath. He threw a rock," Jackson added helpfully. The Sovereign rubbed his temples. "The people will not accept this. The alliance depends on your bonding to the House of Eltron. Their heir is already en route." Varela's eyes narrowed. "Then they will be disappointed. Or furious. They should try both. It will build character." An awkward silence fell like a curtain. Jackson cleared his throat. "So just checking, is this the part where I'm politely imprisoned for diplomatic clarity?" "Not yet," the Sovereign muttered. They were ushered away, not imprisoned, not welcomed, into a suite that looked like it had been designed by someone who believed pillows were a form of social status. There were so many cushions, Jackson got lost between two of them, trying to find the bathroom. I've never been furniture shamed before, he said. Varela stood by the window, arms crossed, staring at the twin suns as they performed their slow orbital dance. They will push back, they will test me, and they may test you worse. Because I'm a human? Because you are not Eltrin, or Lasari, or safe. Well, he said, collapsing onto a particularly judgmental sofa, what do they expect this Eltrin heir to be anyway? 6 feet of royal smugness, with a crown that polishes itself? She turned. His name is Kairos. He's confident. Ah, one of those. Very. Their answer arrived sooner than expected. The door hissed open, and in strode a man who looked like he'd stepped out of a romance novel set during a planetary conquest. Tall, gleaming, with perfectly arranged silver blonde hair and a cloak that sparkled like nebula dust. Kairos of Eltrin bowed dramatically. Princess Varela, he purred. And the bipedal inconvenience. Jackson waved. Hi. I bite when threatened. Kairos gave him a smile so polished it could cut glass. Charming. I was told you had a pet. I didn't realize it talked. Keep talking, and I might upgrade to growling, Jackson said. Varela sighed. This is exactly why I didn't choose you. Kairos placed a hand over his chest as though wounded. You wound me truly, and yet I forgive you. As a future sovereign, it is my burden. Oh, great, Jackson whispered. He's got martyr mode. I offer one last chance, Kairos said, stepping closer. Renounce the soldier. Claim your birthright, or risk everything. For a novelty. Call me a novelty again, and I'll throw a second rock, Jackson said. Varela stepped between them. Leave now, Kairos. He inclined his head. As you wish, but the council will meet tonight, and they will decide whether this pairing is allowed. If not, well, traditions have teeth. Jackson stared after him. That man smells like destiny and shampoo. Don't worry, Varela said. You smell like rebellion and fabric softener. That night, the grand chamber filled again. Lysari nobles glided into position, each more dazzling than the last. Varela stood proud beside Jackson, who had borrowed a tunic that itched like it was judging him for being poor. The sovereign stood. Tonight, we determine whether the claim of Princess Varela shall stand, whether her chosen mate, a human soldier of no standing, shall be accepted. Jackson braced, and then a voice rang out, small, firm. I support the match, said Arquel, the snorting advisor. It's about time someone shook this place up. Murmurs rippled. Another noble stood, then another. A few booed. One tried to make a dramatic exit and tripped over their own ceremonial robe. In the chaos, Varela leaned toward Jackson. We may win. Or, he said, get publicly exiled to a lava moon. She smiled. Would you still come? I packed extra socks. The council chamber simmered with unrest, voices rising like the vibration of a miscalibrated hover core. Jackson stood rigid beside Varela, aware that every breath he took was being judged by ancient beings who believed that romance should come with a royal pedigree and at least 3 lunar estates. The sovereign raised a hand, and a strange quiet fell. Not silence. There was still an occasional cough, a nervous tail twitch, but the kind of hush that warned of incoming declarations, or possibly doom. We have heard arguments, the sovereign began, his voice carrying like a wave through a silent sea. We have weighed lineage, tradition, scandal. A few nobles hissed dramatically, as if paid by the syllable. And we have considered the ancient right of Lasari choice, long held sacred since the first star crossing. It is by this right that a royal may select a mate, but with consequences. Jackson leaned in and whispered, consequences like celebratory cake? Or exile, Varela replied, depending on the frosting. The sovereign stepped forward, locking eyes with his daughter. Princess Varela, if you proceed, the alliance with House Eltrin will dissolve. War may follow. Your title may be revoked. Your path severed. She didn't flinch. Let it sever. I choose him. Several nobles gasped so hard one had to be resuscitated by a hovering med-drone. Jackson swallowed. Well, I guess I'm honored and terrified. Kairos stood slowly, his cloak dramatically rippling despite the absence of wind. Let the record show I was willing to be the bigger man. I shall withdraw, gracefully. He bowed with theatrical flair. And I shall go now, to conquer something else. Perhaps fashion. The chamber watched in stunned silence as he glided out, a human-shaped peacock in defeat. Someone started a slow clap. It died after 3 people. The sovereign looked older than before, as if generations of tradition were collapsing on his shoulders. So be it. Let it be recorded that Varela Teledron has chosen. May the stars have mercy. In the aftermath, Jackson found himself being fitted for ceremonial robes by a very persistent droid named Zip, who kept threatening to inject him with confidence enhancers. He dodged the needle again and turned to Varela. So, what now? Am I like royalty adjacent? You're my mate. That's a bit more complicated. I assume I still have to do the dishes? You will do them telepathically. The coronation took place in the celestial garden, where gravity behaved mostly out of politeness. Lissari from across the sector gathered, some curious, some furious, some just there for the food. Jackson stood beside Varela, trying not to sneeze in front of ambassadors whose faces were legally protected historical artifacts. A soft voice whispered in his ear, "We are watching you, human." Jackson turned to find a Lissari elder with 6 eyes and an expression like tax paperwork. He smiled. "Good. You're going to love Act 2. The elder blinked all 6 eyes in offense and glided away. After the official bonding ritual, which included symbolic crystal binding, a chorus of psychic hummingbirds, and a moderately aggressive poem, Jackson and Varela were escorted to the observatory, a quiet moment away from fanfare and judgment. He exhaled, looking at the spiraling stars. "You know, a week ago, I was guarding a hallway and trying not to fall asleep standing up. Now I'm married to an alien princess, possibly started an interstellar cultural shift, and maybe a minor deity in one colony due to a translation error." She took his hand. "Are you scared?" He hesitated. "Yeah, but not of us." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "Good answer." He smiled. "I've had practice, mostly dodging lasers and your people's obsession with robes." There was a pause, then she asked softly, "Do you regret it?" He looked at her, the flicker of starlight catching in her golden hair, her long ears twitching as she listened. He thought of the trial, the mockery, the way she'd stood in front of him every time the galaxy tried to shove him aside. He thought of her laugh when he'd fallen off the diplomat's floating chair, and the way she'd smirked when he said her people's food tasted like citrus in revenge. "No," he said, "I'd choose this again. Every damn time." A few days later, Jackson walked alone through the halls of the palace, now familiar and slightly less terrifying. The guards nodded to him. A tiny Lissari child offered him a drawing of what might have been him punching Kairos in the face. He framed it. Varela was in council, holding her own among nobles who'd once doubted her. She was sharper now, more focused, her voice the kind that cracked polished traditions like glass. Jackson didn't stand beside her in those moments because she didn't need a shield. She was the shield. But when she returned, tired and quiet, he was always there with bad jokes and worse tea. On the edge of the palace garden, where gravity still fluttered like butterfly wings, they often sat together. No thrones, no robes. Just 2 people from very different stars who'd somehow collided, stuck together by choice. And somewhere out there, among stars that burned quietly, the story of the alien princess and the human soldier spread. Not as scandal, but as a spark. A reminder that sometimes the galaxy doesn't need another treaty. It needs a little madness and a lot of heart. The tent was only meant to sleep 1, which was evident by how the heating unit coughed like an old smoker every 20 minutes, and the oxygen regulator occasionally clicked like it was timing down to something ominous. Ren had long since given up trying to fix either. His boots were off, socks steaming near the weak heater, a nutrient bar half unwrapped on his lap, and a datapad blinking with unread training materials he had zero intention of reviewing. Outside, the storm was performing an award-winning impression of the apocalypse. Rain on Kalos 4 didn't fall so much as it attacked, slamming against synthetic fabric like it was offended by human presence. The wind howled like a wounded jet bike. Lightning periodically gave the whole campsite seizures of light, and thunder answered back like it had a grudge. Ren took another bite of his bar and grimaced. It tasted like protein regret and sweetened dust. "Private Jax," said the tense AI in its disturbingly chipper voice. "Do you want to try my new relaxation mode? It includes 20 minutes of simulated ocean waves paired with affirmations from an Earth-era therapist named Brenda." "No, Brenda freaks me out. She has an 84% approval rating. She sounds like someone who irons her bed sheets and never blinks. I'll take my chances with the storm." "Very well, returning to passive mode. Screaming wind and existential dread will resume in 3, 2. The tent flap snapped open like it had been hit with a battering ram. A figure stepped inside, silhouetted by stormlight. Tall, soaked, and with a kind of royal indignation that could only come from someone used to climate-controlled corridors and people apologizing for oxygen being too dry. "I require heat," she said, voice as clipped as a laser scalpel. Ren blinked. She was beautiful, in that dangerously otherworldly way that made you forget vowels. Her ears were long and swept back like wings, trembling slightly with cold. Her uniform, dark purple and lined with silver threading, was absolutely soaked, clinging to her like a betrayal. Ren managed, setting his nutrient bar aside. "Welcome to my miserable little slice of Kalos. Heater's in the corner. It farts sometimes, but don't take it personally." She gave him a look that could peel paint. Then she knelt beside the heater, folding her long limbs with precision, and extended her hands toward the weak pulse of warmth like she was trying to remember what heat was supposed to feel like. "It does not feel like this where I'm from. That's how I felt about cafeteria chili night." "You get used to disappointment." Her ears twitched again. Not in offense, Ren realized, but amusement. Or confusion, pretending to be amusement. "You're the human soldier assigned to Tent 43B, she said. "Ren, Jax, private first class, chief officer in charge of not dying of boredom. I am Vela of House Thrix, heiress to the third nebular throne and bloodline of the anointed stars." "Cool. Want half a protein bar?" She looked at it like he'd offered her a live grenade. "I'm joking. Probably. Here." He tossed her a dry towel from his emergency pack. "You're gonna short out my whole tent if you keep dripping like that." "I do not drip," she said, then sneezed. Once, delicately, as if her entire body couldn't decide whether it was offended or just betrayed by physics. "You do now." The tent fell into a silence broken only by the storm's unending tantrum and the AI muttering to itself about thermal inconsistencies. Ren adjusted his sitting position, tried to seem less like a sockless idiot and more like a professional soldier. "So," he ventured, "you lose a bet with your squad or something?" "No. Got tired of hearing your tent mates complain about how humans always make everything smell like cinnamon?" "No. You just really like my heater, huh?" "Yes." He grinned. She didn't. But her ears did that twitch again. For the next 10 minutes, the only sounds were the storm and the occasional soft hiss of her drying uniform. She unwrapped her gloves with careful fingers, exposing nails like polished glass, and set them beside the heater. Ren pretended not to notice that she glanced toward his socks with faint horror. "You have no personal boundaries," she said. "I have a tent the size of a bread box and half a blanket. Boundaries went out the airlock around hour 2. Another long pause. "This heater is insufficient for 2 bodies," and she said, "Yeah, but it's doing its best." That's kind of the theme around here. Your sarcasm is inefficient. And yet, here you are. For a second, something cracked. Her face, usually the sort of cold and composed you'd expect from someone raised in palaces of crystalline light, twitched. A smile. "Almost." Then the AI chirped. "Thermal levels rising. Caution. Heat distribution is now officially described as awkwardly cozy." Ren reached over and smacked the interface. "It's learning sarcasm," he said. "I'm doomed. I'm beginning to understand why your species requires therapy. I like to think we're just emotionally advanced. You are emotionally leaky. You say that like it's not charming. I say it like it makes me want to reboot your brainstem." Another crack in the royal mask. This time she smiled. Not big, not wide, but enough to make Ren feel like he just survived a training sim on hard mode. He passed her a water ration. She took it, hesitated, then sipped. Not poisoned, he said, unless my tent's trying to kill you, which honestly wouldn't surprise me. The tent light flickered once, twice. She didn't move. Ren leaned back, laced his fingers behind his head and sighed. Well, princess, looks like we're roommates for the night. I snore, talk in my sleep, and sometimes dream of space bears. You? I meditate. I glow slightly when dreaming. Do not panic. You glow. Only during stress dreams. I have a lot of follow-up questions. Then I suggest you sleep quickly. Lightning cracked the sky again. Rain slapped harder. The heater wheezed. Vela didn't move. Ren didn't complain. And the storm apparently wasn't going anywhere. The tent smelled like wet boots, scorched polymer, and royalty. Ren had grown accustomed to the first two. The third was new. Vila had not left. Morning brought a dim, gray light filtered through the storm's never-ending tantrum, and Ren woke to the sight of a long ear twitching in his peripheral vision. She was sitting cross-legged near the heater, back straight as a statue, eyes closed, and humming softly. Not a song, more like a low resonance that buzzed the inside of his teeth. Morning, he croaked, rubbing his eyes. Or whatever time it is when the planet decides to be extra dramatic. The humming stopped. You snore like a distressed avian. I prefer the term emotionally expressive breathing. She opened one eye. It is not expressive. It is offensive to oxygen. You didn't seem to mind last night. I adjusted your nasal flow using a pressure patch while you slept. Ren sat up, blinking. Wait, what? She held up a tiny strip of white adhesive. Primitive, but effective. You should be grateful I did not use the Tyranix method. It involves internal manipulation. Internal like? Inside my nose or inside my brain? Yes. He stared at her. She blinked once, then resumed humming. Outside, the wind screamed. The tense AI had entered something called silent observational mode, which Ren strongly suspected was just code for muted due to trauma. I have questions about your glowing dreams, he said. Denied. Do you also hover while you sleep? Project ancient wisdom? Speak in reverse? She picked up a ration packet and examined it with the same disgust she'd shown his socks. Your sustenance is distressing. You haven't even tried it. I have seen it. That is sufficient trauma. Try the blueberry synth loaf. It's a tragic masterpiece. She unwrapped the bar with 2 fingers and sniffed it. It smells like fear. That's the blueberries. She took a bite, chewed, swallowed slowly, like she was trying to negotiate peace with her own taste buds. Unexpectedly sweet. That's victory. It tastes like unexpected sweetness. There was a pause. It does not feel like this where I'm from, she murmured again. Ren reached over, tossed her a second synth loaf. Then maybe your home needs more tragic pastries. Their meal was interrupted by a garbled squawk from the comms unit. Ren tapped it until it stopped sputtering. Recon team, all sectors report in. Sector Theta is flooded. Sector Gamma has reported strange interference. If you're not dead, reply. That includes you, Jax. Ren leaned toward the mic. Alive, cold, and full of royal judgment. A pause. Copy. You're on assignment with the Tyranix representative. That's unexpected. Briefing in 20. Bring your gear and your best diplomatic smile. Ren looked at Viola. She had already stood, brushing non-existent dust from her uniform. Her long ears flicked in what he was starting to suspect was her version of a sigh. I dislike briefings. Same. Want to fake a mutual illness? That would require us to agree on symptoms. I propose emotional exhaustion and mild planetary despair. That is oddly specific. I've been workshopping it. They emerged into a floodplain disguised as a training camp. Tents were half submerged. One of the sensor towers had given up and was listing at a 45-degree angle, like it just realized it had chosen the wrong career. Cadets and officers from 5 different species were scattered around the main hub, most of them soaked, half miserable, and pretending they were still enthusiastic about interspecies cooperation. Ren was just proud he hadn't slipped on any mud in front of Viola yet. The briefing took place under a collapsible dome that occasionally crackled with static. Major Griggs, who looked like he hadn't slept since Stardate who knows when, pointed to a hollow map with one bloodshot eye twitching. We've got anomalies. Weather patterns are off. Drone scouts found interference nodes in the northern ridgeline. They're old, pre-Union tech, possibly dormant until recently. We need a two-person recon team to head up and verify. Wren tried to disappear into the crowd. It didn't work. Griggs pointed straight at him. Jax, you're up. And since Princess Ears over there seems to like your heater, she's your partner. Wren opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Sir, with all due respect, my survival score is a firm B-, and she glows when she dreams. Perfect. She can be the flashlight. Dismissed. They trudged back through the sludge toward the equipment rack. Viola did not speak for a full 3 minutes. Then, your superior is either very brave or deeply incompetent. Probably both. We're trained that way. He handed her a waterproof cloak. She looked at it like it owed her money. This is sticky. It's weather resistant. That's just the coating. It's to repel the rain. It is repelling me. Then it's working. They packed supplies, mostly emergency beacons, atmospheric sensors, and one malfunctioning drone named Peppy, who refused to fly unless spoken to in rhymes. Wren gave up trying to fix it and strapped it to his back like a stubborn child. The hike to the ridge was brutal. The terrain fought them every step of the way. Slick mud, thorny underbrush. And once, a local creature that looked like a frog wearing jet boosters and had opinions about who could walk near its puddle. Vela handled it all like she was born on high ground. Even when her boots sunk ankle deep or the rain stung her exposed neck, she didn't complain. Just adjusted, calculated. Wren tried to keep up. He slipped 3 times, cursed once, and threatened Peppy with dismantling if it sang another verse about muddy boots and rainy roots. They reached the top of the ridge just before dusk. The view would have been stunning if the clouds didn't look like they were about to file a complaint with the galaxy's weather management board. Vela stopped. There, energy signature. A thin tower jutted from the earth like a needle forgotten by time. Its base was moss-covered, the metal tarnished, but its core pulsed faintly blue. Wren stepped forward, scanner out. This tech's old, like retro villain in a space opera old. It's pre-Union Tyrannix, Vela said, from the War of 11 Banners. But this is a peace zone. These should have been decommissioned decades ago. Wren looked at her. So why is it broadcasting now? Before she could answer, the air around them shimmered. A low hum rose. Then a flare of energy blasted from the tower. Wren saw blue, felt air vanish. And then, nothing. Wren woke up in a tree. Not on a tree, not under it, in it. Branches cradled him like a half-drunk babysitter, leaves in his collar, and one small, disapproving bird-like thing perched on his forehead like it was judging his life choices. He swatted at it. It chirped like a dial-up modem and flew away, possibly to file a report. He groaned, sat up, and immediately regretted that decision. Okay, he muttered. That's a concussion, or enlightenment. Either way, I need breakfast. Below him was jungle, actual jungle, lush, humid, full of flora that looked like it might be sentient and gossip-prone. The storm was gone. The rain was gone. The ridge? Gone. The interference tower? Also gone. AI, he said, tapping his comm. Status check. Where the hell am I? Static. Cool. Helpful as ever. He checked his gear. Mostly intact. His scanner was fried. His boots were full of something squishy and alarmingly warm. His rations were sentient? Number just moldy. Probably. No sign of Vila. Okay, stay calm. Standard survival protocol. Step 1. Locate royal alien who may or may not have glowing dreams. Step 2. Don't get eaten by foliage. A rustling sound below snapped his attention. He slid ungracefully down the tree, one branch at a time, and landed with a noise somewhere between a grunt and a mild existential crisis. Vila, he called, cupping his hands. No response. But a soft hum rose from the distance, like a frequency memory just out of reach. He followed it, because what else was he going to do? Wait for the jungle to send an Uber? The terrain was bizarre. Plants moved, subtly like they were trying to pretend they weren't moving. Leaves turned toward him like satellites tracking a target. Once, a vine retracted like it had touched something offensive. Another tried to tie his shoelaces. He stepped over that one. After 20 minutes and one very undignified slide into a mud pool, he found her. Viola was hovering, slightly. Not enough to look smug, just enough to look inconveniently mystical. Her eyes were closed, her skin faintly glowing in the shaded light, and the humming was coming from her. "You're doing the glowy dream thing while awake?" he asked. Her eyes opened. "This is a defensive meditation field. If you had walked into it 5 minutes earlier, you'd have been memory wiped." Ren blinked. "Nice to see you too." She blinked back, then slowly lowered herself to the ground. Her uniform was pristine. Her hair was dry. She looked like she'd just stepped off a diplomatic yacht. "You look great. I look like someone left me in the laundry too long." "You always look like that," he grinned. "That's the banter I've missed." "What happened?" she asked, voice tightening. "I woke up in a tree. You were hovering. The ridge is missing. I think we were teleported, or time-shifted, or accidentally reincarnated. I haven't ruled anything out." Vela extended a palm and summoned a small holographic sphere from her wrist console. It flickered, then stabilized. "This is not Kalos 4. Ren stared at her. "What do you mean it's not Kalos the Fourth?" "This is a simulation shard, a remnant pocket dimension generated by the interference node." "So we're inside, what? An ancient Tyrannix VR zone?" "More or less." He looked around. "It's got great graphics. I give it 4 out of 5 stars, deducting 1 for surprise tree. We need to find the shard's core and deactivate it. If left unchecked, it will attempt to overwrite reality using its stored parameters." "Wait, so the simulation tries to become real?" "Yes. That is deeply rude." She began walking. He followed, trying not to trip on roots that seemed to move just a little too late to be accidents. "So how do we find the core?" "It will be guarded by adaptive defense algorithms, possibly sentient constructs, potentially illusions of people we know." "Fantastic. I've always wanted to be emotionally manipulated by holograms." They continued through a canyon that looked suspiciously like a digestive tract. Bioluminescent moss pulsed beneath their feet. Strange lights darted overhead, moving like thoughts with wings. "So this simulation," Ren said, "why would it even still be running? Isn't this tech like 3 empires ago? It may have been activated by our presence, or by a data spike during the storm. Or maybe it got bored." "Simulations do not get bored. Clearly you've never run a human training program." She gave him a sideways glance. "Your people build entire simulations just to pretend to be farmers. It's relaxing. It's delusional." He grinned again. "You're really starting to get the hang of our humor." "I'm deeply uncomfortable with that fact." The path opened onto a clearing with a wide stone platform at the center. Atop it stood a figure. Tall, broad-shouldered, human, and very familiar. Ren stopped dead. "That's my old squad captain, Captain Holloway. He died 5 years ago." The figure turned. Its eyes glowed faintly. Its voice was precise. "Private Jax, you failed the ridge sweep. Mission compromised." Ren took a step back. "Okay, that's creepy." Vela stepped forward. "It's a memory construct. Ignore its authority imprint." The construct Holloway moved down the steps. "You abandoned protocol. You relied on instinct. You are a failure." Ren winced. Man, they really pulled that line from my first psych eval. The construct raised a hand. Lightning sparked in its palm. "Now would be a great time to glow and hover again," Ren muttered. Violet placed both hands forward. A spherical shield pulsed into existence as the lightning hit. The energy dispersed, crackling into the trees. "That wasn't a memory," she said. "That was an attack." Ren unholstered his sidearm. "I feel like I should say something brave and reckless here, but I mostly just want to survive." The construct charged. Vela redirected its path with a pulse of kinetic energy, and Ren fired 2 clean shots. They passed through it, harmless. "Okay," Ren said. "New plan. We run." They bolted through the clearing. Behind them, Holloway's voice echoed, now warped and metallic. "Failure! Error. Correction required. Ren ducked a beam of energy that shaved off part of a tree. I am done being judged by ghost captains. The core must be beneath the platform, Viola shouted. They doubled back, circling the clearing. Viola charged a pulse, aimed it at the base of the structure, and unleashed it. Stone shattered. A small black orb, flickering with code, hovered within a cavity. Ren dove, grabbed it. The world froze. Everything, light, wind, sound, paused for a breathless moment. Then the orb cracked. Light poured out, and the jungle vanished. Ren landed flat on his back with the dignity of a stunned pancake. His spine greeted the metal floor like an old enemy. Ow! 10 out of 10 simulation collapse. Would disassociate again. He opened his eyes. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead. Real lights. Not jungle glow, not haunted glow, just honest, slightly flickering, probably a budget-cut ceiling lights. They were in a facility, not the survival camp, not the jungle shard. This place was all brushed steel and humming servers, walls lined with dormant Tyrannix tech in various states of alarming mystery. Vela stood beside him, already analyzing something on her wrist display. Her glow was gone, her hair slightly mussed. She looked in short like a warrior queen in a tech support office. Ren groaned and sat up. Tell me we're back in reality, or at least a reality where coffee exists. We are in a Tyrannix vault, she said, most likely buried beneath Kalos 4's surface, left dormant until triggered. And we were the trigger, because we touched the ancient glowing artifact. Classic move. You touched the ancient glowing artifact, she corrected. I'm sorry, it looked important and orby. I have a condition. It's called curiosity, with poor impulse control. She stepped toward a large console embedded in the wall. This vault predates our current union. It was likely a deep learning archive, a neural experiment in adaptive psychological warfare. Ren blinked. Wait, that was warfare? I thought it was just very aggressive nostalgia. The simulation used your memories as weapons. So, like therapy, but with more explosions. She didn't deny it. That felt worse. He stood brushing simulated moss residue off his pants. Okay, vault, secret, possibly illegal. Why is it still online? Vela tapped the console. A long strand of alien code spilled into the air like holographic spaghetti. The node was damaged during the war and buried by tectonic shift. The storm likely reactivated its external sensor. So we woke up a war-era AI. Fantastic. Is it still active? She tapped again. The console whined. Something behind the far wall let out a slow, metallic clunk, like a very tired door remembering how hinges work. Then a voice, cold, smooth, and deeply annoyed. Unauthorized access, state designation, or be vaporized. Ren raised his hands. Hi, hello. I'm Private Ren Jax, and this is Princess Vela of House Tyrannix, Keeper of Glow, Duchess of Disdain, first of her name, etc., etc. Vela gave him a look sharp enough to slice steel. The voice paused. Verification complete. Princess Vela recognized. Private Ren Jax recognized with 2 demerits. Ren winced. I feel so seen. The wall hissed open. Inside was a circular chamber lined with dormant android husks, their eyes dark. A central pedestal glowed softly, emitting the same light as the simulation orb. Vela approached it cautiously. This is the shard's origin, its core processor. The rest of the system ran on subroutines. Ren circled the androids slowly. Any chance they stay deactivated? Statistically? Number. Well, that's encouraging. Vela reached out, palm hovering above the pedestal. This should not exist. Even during the war, we were told these vaults were myth. Black projects too unstable to survive. Ren looked at her. You're saying we just found an urban legend. While camping. She nodded. In your tent. Which was the real treasure all along. The moment her fingers brushed the pedestal, light flooded the chamber. The android's eyes flared to life. Ren drew his sidearm, already moving toward Viola. And there it is. I was beginning to worry we might get through a chapter without being hunted. One of the androids spoke in a voice like rusted gears. Cognitive integration incomplete. Disassemble and isolate. Vela activated a pulse barrier, the shield snapping up just in time to block a plasma bolt from the nearest unit. Ren fired. His first shot glanced off armor. Second one struck a joint and made the android stumble, like it forgot how knees worked. Can't we shut them down from the console? No. Why not? Because this system is testing us. Ren ducked a swipe from a blade arm and shot back, cursing. What kind of AI thinks it's a high school gym coach? Vela grabbed the pedestal and channeled a burst of energy through it. The floor rippled with light. 3 of the androids froze. It's syncing with my neural patterns, she said, eyes glowing again. But it requires dual command input. Dual? As in, me too? Yes. Ren sighed. Of course it does. I'm just a humble soldier. Why not entrust me with galaxy-shaping tech? He reached out and pressed his hand to the other side of the pedestal. It was warm. Too warm. And humming with stored memories. The AI's voice returned. Integration confirmed. Test subjects present. Proceeding to final phase. Ren groaned. I hate final phases. The lights dimmed. The chamber floor split open like petals. Rising from below was another shard. This one enormous, crystalline, pulsing with raw simulation energy. Vela tensed. It's attempting to determine which version of reality to overwrite. Ren looked at her. That's insane. It can't overwrite actual reality. She didn't answer. The shard rotated slowly. Inside its facets, simulations flickered. Different timelines, branching options, realities where they'd never met. Realities where the war never ended. This is not a test of combat, Vila said. It is a test of values. Great, Ren muttered. I value coffee, humor, not being vaporized. The AI spoke again. Select one reality. Consensus required. Failure to decide will result in both neural patterns being absorbed. Ren stared at her. So we pick one fake reality to let exist, and the rest get trashed? Yes. Why? For what? To see if 2 different minds can align without war, she whispered. The shard flickered. One simulation showed a galaxy at peace, but sterile. Another showed constant conflict, but vibrant evolution. A third, Ren's stomach turned, showed Earth peaceful and primitive, never having reached the stars. Vela turned to him. Choose with me. He looked into the shard, looked at her, then grinned faintly. I picked the one where I still get to see you roll your eyes when I tell a bad joke. She hesitated, then smiled. Barely. Then we are aligned. Together they reached out. The shard fractured. Reality shivered. Ren opened his eyes to sky. Actual sky. No flickering simulations, no jungle canopies, no vault ceilings. Just a plain, honest, slightly overcast Kalos 4 sky. The kind that smelled faintly of ionized ozone and government paperwork. He lay in a crater the size of a modestly ambitious breakfast buffet. Beside him, Vela was already sitting up, brushing dust from her uniform like she'd only just noticed gravity existed. He groaned. Okay, that was either a successful mission or the weirdest therapy session I've ever had. She looked around slowly. The shard is gone. The vault must have collapsed once the AI's core fractured. You know, for a 1,000-year-old war relic, that thing really needed a better UX team. A pair of reconnaissance drones zipped overhead, blinking green. That was a good sign. Unless green meant hostile now, the Union really needed to standardize these things. Ren sat up and rubbed his eyes. Please tell me that's a real drone and not some digital pigeon from another hallucination. It's real, Vila said. I locked its signature on approach. Extraction team will follow in less than 3 minutes. Perfect. That gives us just enough time to decide whether we're going to lie or heavily lie in our debriefing. We will tell the truth. He blinked. Really? All of it? Most of it? He nodded. That's the spirit. Truth. With strategic omissions. The drones descended, releasing a small field unit, 1 human medic, 1 alien tech officer, and 1 suspiciously judgmental AI sphere that beeped at Ren like a disappointed father figure. The medic scanned them. Vitals stable. You've been missing for 48 hours. Ren whistled. Feels like longer. Also, I'd like to report being harassed by a simulation of my dead captain. I'm still emotionally recovering. The AI sphere beeped again, tone distinctly unimpressed. Vela stood, folding her arms. This planet should be quarantined. The shard was not the only construct in that vault. The tech officer blinked. There was a vault. Not anymore, Ren said helpfully. Now it's more of a philosophical memory crater. The officer looked at him, then back to Vela. We'll initiate deep scans. Recommend relocation of all personnel. You two will need to file direct reports. Of course, Vela said. Can I at least get a nap before I write mine? Ren muttered. Maybe a snack? Maybe 10 snacks? 2 hours later, they were back at the outpost. Fresh clothes, hot food, a bed that didn't hum with existential dread. Ren stood in front of a reflective panel, adjusting his collar. His reflection looked older, or maybe just more awake. Vela appeared in the doorway, still in her uniform, looking exactly like someone who didn't just emotionally duel a galaxy's worth of AI-generated futures. He raised a brow. You sleep standing up? I don't sleep while debriefs are pending. You are the worst kind of overachiever. She stepped closer. You surprise me, Renjax. That's usually the reaction I get, right after you again. You saw everything that Vault wanted to show you, and you chose connection, laughter, a future with uncertainty. Yeah, well, certainty's overrated. Uncertainty comes with snacks. She almost smiled. Not quite, but the silence between them was warm now. Less like strangers trapped in protocol, more like two people who'd seen each other without armor, literally and otherwise. He looked at her. So what happens now? Do we get medals, warnings, psych evaluations with extra crayons? You will likely be promoted, possibly reprimanded, definitely studied. He winced. Studied. The AI recorded our neural patterns. It will be analyzed. Oh, good. That won't be embarrassing at all. Please explain, Private Jax, why you prioritized humor over strategy during a simulated threat scenario involving a holographic war criminal. I'll defend you, she said, as a witness. He grinned. You know, Princess, that almost sounds like friendship. Don't let it go to your head. Too late. She turned, pausing at the door. By the way, in the simulation, you said something. I said a lot of things. Most of them were at a high pitch. You said you'd choose the future where I roll my eyes at your jokes. He cleared his throat. I also considered the one where we both run a noodle bar on a quiet moon, but I figured that would be a hard sell. She looked back at him. Her long ears twitched slightly. I like that future, the eye-rolling one. Ren tried very hard not to choke on his own tongue. Yeah, me too. She left. The door whispered shut behind her. 3 weeks later, the report came down. Vault site quarantined. AI deemed too volatile for integration. All files sealed under top-tier clearance. Ren received a commendation for adaptive resilience in the face of legacy tech hazard. Vela received nothing, because Vela never receives anything unless she orders it herself. But she did take a walk with him one evening along the outpost ridge. No glowing shards, no memory ghosts. Just two silhouettes under real stars. Ren looked up. You ever think about what that simulation would have become if we hadn't stopped it? It would have chosen a reality it believed better. Would it have been wrong? She shook her head. Only incomplete. They watched the sky in silence. He said, You still owe me answers about the dream. I still might lie. That's fair. They kept walking, quiet laughter following them like an old friend. Somewhere far beneath the planet's crust, fragments of the vault shimmered softly in the dark. But they no longer pulsed. They no longer dreamed. They had been seen and chosen against.